Estimating rehab costs like an expert. Hi, I'm Phil Pustiowski with FreedomMentor.com. I'm a full-time real estate investor. I'm a real estate mentor to investors all across the United States and Canada. I've been a part of thousands of real estate transactions at this point. And in this video, I want to show you a very professional and expert level way to go about the process of estimating rehab costs. I'm also going to share with you some things that are probably a little bit unorthodox, against the grain, because one thing I'm going to tell you to do is to ignore a rehab app or any other sort of calculator like that, because rehab costs have many different layers to them. It has to do with the creativity, number one, of how you can get something solved. For example, I want you to take a look at the roof. If you were to drive up to this roof today, you would look at it and it would look like it needs to be replaced. But this roof is only 9 years old, and the discoloration could easily be solved by cleaning the roof with some bleach. So that is creativity. So one person looks at this and says, oh, needs a new roof. I look at this and say, oh, the roof needs to be cleaned for $300. So number one is creativity. Number two is what the overall goal is. Is somebody going to buy this, fix it up completely, and then resell it to a retail buyer? Are they going to just try to clean it out and try to do what we call a prehab and flip it to a novice or contractor investor buyer? Are you going to take it over and rent it out? Next is the neighborhood. Depending on the level of the neighborhood, that's going to determine the level of the materials you're going to want to get. So you can get really high level paint or really low level paint, and that's going to be determined by the neighborhood. You know, if you're remodeling the Taj Mahal, you're going to need the nicest materials. The next thing is labor costs. What part of the country are you in? What are the costs going to be for the labor for someone to show up and do the work? And one fascinating thing is the cost of labor does not always equal quality. Sometimes the best contractors are not that expensive. So that plays a role as well. And finally, just what needs to be done. All right, I want to take you inside here now. Quick tip, if it's a vacant home, what I want you to make sure you do is at least announce yourself in case there's a homeless person. So you'd go, hello, hello, hello. So you want to bring with you tape measure, as well as I bring a clipboard, because the goal here is that you want to be not only writing down the details, but also measuring the rooms, because renovation costs are easily determined by contractors when you give them square footage. We're in this room here, and you can see that it's a complete disaster. The seller left it this way. She said she was a hoarder. Yeah, she certainly is. So let's take a look at this property from my eyes. All right, first of all, the walls are obviously in rough shape when it comes to the paint. However, there's no real problems with holes. It just needs to be painted. However, there's more to paint than meets the eye. First of all, does it need one coat of paint? Does it need primer and then 2 coats of paint? And then what kind of paint is needed? But what you want to do is you want to just make a lot of notes, okay? And another thing that I see that concerns me here is not just painting the walls, but this cathedral ceiling. Now look, there is a stain all along right here, this rafter, which would indicate that potentially there is a roof leak. Now if there's not a roof leak, you still have the issue of that right there. So that means that this popcorn ceiling has to be painted. Now that's a lot more of an ordeal than just painting the walls. So what you're doing is, as you're seeing it through my eyes, you're writing these things down. Now you may not have all the answers as to how much that's going to cost. That's okay. You're writing down what needs to be done. This carpet needs to be replaced. Okay? You can't get away with cleaning this one. Not only is it a disaster in the discoloration, but you also have to consider the fact that the pad underneath has to be replaced. And then, just like paint, you have to consider the idea of the level of which you're gonna spend on the carpet. Is it gonna be high grade or low grade? Because you can get really cheap carpet, and it's thin pad and it's really cheap, or you can get super nice stuff. And that's gonna depend on the neighborhood. It's gonna depend on the house, and it's gonna depend on your your overall goal for the property. If it's a rental property, you may go with the cheapest grade because they're going to destroy the carpet anyways. All right, so when you look across the rest of the room, the nice thing is that's, along with getting rid of all the junk and maybe getting a way to kind of clean up these bricks here on the chimney, this ain't so bad. You may have to paint the molding. This molding may need to be painted because you can see the scratches and scrapes. Also right here you see where you could, it could definitely use a curtain thing, if you know what I'm talking about, across here. But the beauty is this room is not all that bad. Now see, that's for my eyes, of course, and you may be going, oh, this place is a disaster. Not really. It's not that big of a problem. These are simple cosmetic fix-up items. All right, so let's go into the next room. This room is a perfect example of the different usage or exit strategy is going to determine what needs to be done or not in this room. Okay, first of all, if you were looking to buy this house, to fully renovate it, to resell it to a retail buyer, this room is so weird. It just kind of drops down, if you can see this, and then it goes right back up. It's just so strange. So if you were buying this to renovate and resell and you were going to replace the carpets anyways, it wouldn't be all that expensive just to bring some support beams and throw some OSB, some plywood, and just literally make this go even all the way to the kitchen. And then you'd still put the carpet and pad down. So, or in this case, you may want to go in with some laminate. So if you were buying to renovate and resell, you would probably be wise to go ahead and just make that all one level. However, if you were buying this property to lease out, you could save that money. And what you could potentially do is maybe throw some carpet on there, which would be a lot cheaper. So it does depend on the usage. Another example is this wall. This wall is randomly like nice wood paneling. Now, if you were buying this property to rent out, just leave the wall the way it is. However, if you were buying it to renovate and resell it, you'd have to take this. You'd have to throw some sheetrock on top of this and go ahead and paint over it. So, do you see the difference? I mean, it has to do with what it is you're going to do with the property can determine what you do or don't do, or what you can get away with and not get away with. The kitchen is a very important part of a single-family home. So often you'll hear the phrase that it's the kitchen and bath that sells the home. So when it comes to the kitchen, that's where you can be a little bit more critical, because that's usually where the female of the party that's buying the property is going to be a little bit more picky. And this particular property, it has junk everywhere, obviously, so that has to be done. But let's look at the more critical items. The cabinets here. Could these cabinets be just painted and then just change the hardware, meaning the handles? Could that be done? Yes, it could. However, in many cases, because of all the grime and grease and stuff on that, it's so much preparation work to paint the cabinets, sometimes it's actually more efficient just to replace them. Next, you have the countertop. This countertop here actually doesn't look all that bad until you get here and you start to see the buckling going on. And this is the kind of stuff that is not easily, quote, fixed or replaced. So what that means is the countertop most likely would have to be replaced. The oven. This was probably the original oven when this home was built, like in 1980. So this is obviously not gonna last. But ovens aren't that expensive anyways. Another little tip I like to share with people is this. When you open up underneath the sink, you have to kick this stuff around, but you want to see if there's any stains, because that'll tell you if the plumbing's leaking up underneath here. Now, I don't see any stains down there, so I think we're okay, but that's a nice little trick for you to see if there's a problem there. Next is going to be the floor. This floor is awful. The nice thing is, replacing the floor is not all that complicated, but you'd probably want to have them come in with laminate, because these days, the new trend is where the laminate, if you were going to go with that, not only would be in the living room and in the hallways, but also in the kitchen. If you were going to go ahead to the extent and replace everything else, you'd also want to make that match and look nice. The walls, again, this is one of those things where, you know, these walls in this room are not that bad, but you might as well go ahead and paint them. And lastly is this light up here. You know, this thing looks pretty lousy. So a couple of things. First, you may want to have the person just paint the wood into a white color. That way it matched the trim, because it's kind of weird. This house has had this kind of this natural wood trim, and it looks 1980, like when it was built. So this would just need to be cosmetically fixed up, and that would really transform the kitchen. And really, the truth of the matter is, if you spent more of your money in the kitchen than other places, it's money well spent. When you're walking around the property and there is a seller with you, one of the nice things is you don't have to overly point out the problems. All you really have to do is, when you see a problem, you go, you make a note. Because they're walking with you and you're talking with them, and they will see that. They will see that you looked at something and you wrote a note. It's kind of like if you were in a meeting with like a psychiatrist, and every time you said something, they went, oh. You know, so then you're like, uh-oh, what did I say? So the same thing happens with the seller. And that way, what happens is, without you having to beat them over the head, it's part of the negotiation strategy, is that as you're walking through the property, and you can make some facial expressions like, but not overly. And what it does is it helps the negotiation. Because what you want to do is you want to be building rapport with the seller while you're walking through the property. And what that does is that lowers what they feel they have in their hands. Because inevitably, if you live in a home every day, you don't see all the problems you live with. But when some outsider comes in with the clipboard and they're looking around, you see every problem there is, because now all of a sudden it's being magnified. And so that's going to help you. So you want to go through the whole property. Now, another quick tip: if the seller is demanding to get an offer from you, and you feel like if you wait any bit of time that potentially you could lose the deal, one quick tip is this: you can estimate the rehab costs on chunks of $5,000. So if it's light cosmetic, $5 grand and fix up. If it needs a little bit more than light cosmetic, 10 grand. A little bit more, 15 grand. Needs some more work, carpet, paint, bunch more stuff, 20 grand. And so you can literally estimate in chunks of 5 grand. Now, you may underestimate or overestimate. And either way, here's the good thing. First of all, if you overestimate it, it only helps you. But if you underestimate it, and in fact, a $20,000 rehab is really going to cost you $30,000. Once you have it under contract, once you're going through the due diligence process, you can come back to the seller a week later. You can say, you know what? I talked to my contractor. He looked at the material costs, and there's no way we can get that work done for $20,000. Minimum, it's going to be $30,000, and you can renegotiate. Okay? So that's a quick rule of thumb. The rule of, these 5K chunks. That's a quick rule of thumb for you. All right. So to summarize what the purpose of this video is, it's really to give you my eyes on when I go into a property. And some of the things you've noticed is that I look at things from a bunch of different angles. And that is, if I was going to rent this house versus if I was going to take it down with hard money and renovate and resell it. And so these kind of things can play a role in what, quote, needs to be done and what doesn't need to be done. And I also like to write a lot more notes down than I ever need, because sometimes creativity can trump everything else, because there can be creative ways to solve problems. I want to take you inside the rest of the house just so you can get a quick look at this place. And come with me, because I want to show you something interesting. Get this. What I'm about to share with you is the master bedroom. Now, somebody lived here. I'm not kidding. Are you ready for this? This is the master bedroom. All right. Yeah, exactly. Look at this place. No, this is a big room. This is huge. It'd be hard to get the tape measure. Oh, this is priceless. Cassette tape. Dance aerobics. All right. So you've got the vaulted ceilings, which you have to be cognizant of, because that's going to make the cost of the paint more. But you don't even know what you don't even know back in here. So sometimes you have to just estimate a little bit of a fudge factor just because you got a bunch of junk. All right. So as we come back here, what I find so fascinating is, somebody actually carved out a path so they could get to the master bathroom. And you're going to love this master bathroom. Now, normally I would say that if you were going to fully renovate and resell a house, it would be to pull down the wallpaper and replace it. But this wallpaper is so priceless, I think you keep it. Okay, no, I'm kidding. Don't keep this. This is absolutely hideous. But if you were renting the property, it actually wouldn't matter because the wallpaper does a good job of protecting the walls, especially in the bathroom where you have a lot of moisture. So this master bathroom, as you can see, it's actually segmented. You've got the section with the sink and the vanity, and then you go in, you have the actual shower and the toilet. And in both cases back there, it's really about just cleaning the tile. Remember, I mentioned that just a minute ago. Sometimes cleaning the tile can make all the difference in the world. And the master bedroom, when you can have a bathroom on the bedroom, that is very beneficial. So there's a huge value when you're looking at a property if it's got the bathroom off the major bedroom, because that's what people like. People like to have a bathroom right off of their bedroom, especially if it's the parents. When I see tile like this, I get excited because I know that doesn't have to be replaced. There are contractors that have special equipment that can clean the grout and can clean this tile to make it look brand new. So in this case, nothing needs to be replaced here. This is really exciting, actually. I love to see tile in bathrooms because it can make the difference of saving thousands of dollars and not having to be replaced. I want to share with you an important point when you're walking through the house as you potentially look at bedrooms or rooms in general. And that is this, that a bedroom is technically not a bedroom unless it has a closet. So this room obviously has a closet. In fact, this is a nice big closet, and people love big closets. But it's important because if you go into a room and it doesn't have a closet, well, that could be an office space. But if you wanted to make it a bedroom, you would have to add a closet at a minimum. If you can picture this, I got to tell you this funny story. So I went to this house one time, and they had a stack. He had it right next to, it was in his bedroom, his small TV. He had a stack of videos of Carlton Sheets, how to buy and sell real estate with no money down. Now, it was still in the package. And it was right there on his, and I bought the deal no money down. I used the techniques that he could have learned had he actually opened the packages. Hilarious. Let's go to the garage here. It's a little bit simpler of a room to evaluate, but you want to keep your eye on a couple of things. The first is, are there any leaks anywhere? It just so happens here on the ground we have some water leakage. Now that's important because we have the washer-dryer hookups right here. So from one perspective you think it's the washer-dryer hookups, but it turns out there's a little mini freezer right in between them, and that's where the water's coming from because the utilities got shut off, and so this the ice in there had melted. Another thing that's important to point out in the garage is usually that's where they also have the hot water heater. And in this example, this hot water heater is in great shape. These things can last, depending on how much they put in the beginning, they can last quite a while. So usually I just assume it's working unless it's not working. I also like to see if it's gas or electric because I have found that a lot of people hate gas heat. They hate it because then they have 3 utility bills. Now, usually gas is more efficient than electric, but that's not what homeowners perceive to be the case. So, hot water heater looks to be in good shape. And as you go through the rest of the garage, one thing I like to go do is at least check out the breaker box. Now, I don't necessarily know what's in the breaker box, but I go check it out to see if it's really ancient or not. One of the issues you can run into is sometimes they may have like a 60-watt panel and what's required is 120 volt. That's something you may not know the answer to. However, you can even take a picture of that. You can take a picture of the breaker box if you know an electrician that can help you. Another quick tip is this. If you're trying to be as productive as humanly possible with the trip, then what you may want to end up doing is cutting off the breaker if the utilities are off. Because if you cut the breaker off, then you can just call up the electrical company and they can turn it back on. But if the electricity is on and well, from the breaker it's on, but the electricity company has to go in and turn it on. If they feel like the meter is going to start turning the minute they flip the switch, they may not turn it on. So something as simple as that can really take a lot of your day, because you have to drive all the way back to the property to simply flip the breaker down. Does that make sense? Walking around the outside is really about being perceptive of what potentially could be a problem. So what I'm looking for is, number one, can I get away with the exterior the way it is? Do I have to paint? Is the vinyl siding all cracked and messed up? In this case, if you were going to fully rehab it, you want to paint it, but the paint's not too bad. I look at the landscaping. Now, I know this is a disaster, but you get it cleaned up and you'd be amazed how much better it looks. You don't always have to re-saw it and always have to reseed. One big concern I have has to do with water. And look at right there. There is some water damage that's occurring, and it's creating mold right there. So that's going to have to get reflashed. No matter whether it's rented or whatnot, nobody wants to see that. So I'm also looking to see if there are any potential problems with termites. So I'm looking to see, is any wood touching the ground? Because that's a first sign indicator, because now you got a direct route for those termites. I like how there's literally 2 cinder blocks length to keep it off the ground from the termites. If you're way up north, like in the frozen tundra of Green Bay or Vermont, you may not have any problems with termites, otherwise you probably will. So I'm also seeing where you've got torn up screen here. You got a hole right up there. Although that's not a big problem, you would just fill that in with some Bondo. But I want to show you this. You may be surprised, but look at the backyard. It's lakefront. This property's on a lake. Now, they're not accentuating that because they've let it overgrow, but this is very special. When you have waterfront property, you're instantly adding value. Not just the value of being able to sell it, but overall appraisal value. Appraisers will give you a bump because you're on the water. And this particular location is actually close to the community pool and clubhouse. And that makes a difference as well. People like to be close to the community pool. And now that is not going to give you any sort of appraisal value bump, but it will give you marketability bump. So what you can do with lakefront property obviously is accentuated by making it easier to see. You may even consider changing the screen to a plexiglass or something, because then it's easier to see and accentuate this beautiful lake, which, by the way, this lake is gorgeous. It's crystal clear water. Now, one thing that sometimes is a problem is, what if the HOA won't let you cut everything down? That's something you have to be aware of. But I'll say this, forgiveness is easier than permission. All right, you heard that from me. Okay, so as you come around, I'm still looking for major problems. I see this right here. This could indicate some termite damage. It may not be a big deal if you're renting it, but if you're selling the house, that's going to have to get taken care of. Not a big, huge project, but it needs to be dealt with. As you come around this corner, you see the side yard. One of the things I noticed, and you probably jumps out at you as well, is they've got this gigantic bush that's basically covering the whole side of the yard. So it could be as simple as just mowing that whole thing down. That way they got more of a yard. You know, one of the things, especially with people with kids, is they want some sort of a yard. That can be very helpful. So if you don't have a yard, like this one doesn't, that can be a negative. It's a positive if it's a retired couple or somebody that doesn't want a yard, but in general, that is going to reduce the marketability. It may not reduce the appraisal, but it'll reduce the marketability. Okay, so as we come along this side of the house, one of the things you're going to notice is that this side porch is rough. This thing is rotted. I don't know how you'd revive this thing. I mean, it's hard to throw a coat of paint on this because it's just so nasty. So you may have to replace this one. Now, if you were renting it, you probably wouldn't, because it's not like someone's going to fall through. It's just if you were selling it, you'd have to do something about that. Other than that, what also you have to contend with is the AC unit, and we're about to see that here in a minute. This electrical box looks a little bit more fancy. It's been replaced recently. But the AC is very important, because that could be a very big expense. What I like to do is this. I like to obviously get a visual on it. I like to try to turn it on, see how it's working. What I also like to do is I like to take a picture of whatever the sticker is from whoever last fixed it up. Because usually a smart AC contractor is going to stick their sticker on there. And I will take a picture of that, or I'll make that note, because I'll try to call them to see if they have in their notes the last time they serviced this. I'll also take a picture, it's on the back side, of the actual, details of the unit, when it was built and all those other sort of great things. Because what can happen is it'll have the model number on there. I can look up the model number to see all sorts of details. And a lot of times the AC is working, so it just needs to be serviced to make it even better. Maybe it needs some Freon, that sort of thing. One of the challenges is if it's winter time or if it's cold, you can't run the AC because the AC usually kicks on about 55 or 60 degrees outside. So if that's the case, oh well. Now you do the best you can. One other quick tip. Here I just talked about mowing things down, right? Well, sometimes the best thing to do is just manicure what the homeowner already had. A lot of times homeowners had the best of intentions and started off with a beautiful home, but over time they just let it go by the wayside. Look at this. This is a beautiful little tree here with pretty flowers. So as opposed to just mowing this thing down, maybe you just need to get rid of the weeds that are surrounding some of it and then accentuate this thing. Hey, I mean, the cost to put one of these things in play with this kind of maturity, I mean, it's sometimes nicer to go with what's already there. So that's the beautiful thing about this. Creativity is so helpful, because so often you can get away with a lot of stuff because the homeowner had the best of intentions previously, but just let things go, slide a little bit, and sometimes you can just kind of catch those things back up. When you're done, the hope is that no stone has been left unturned. Because obviously the most important part of this is to gather as much information as humanly possible. Because my attitude is I only want to make the trip once. And also sellers, they would rather somebody get a lot done in one trip only because they're hoping to solve their problem. The more motivated they are, the more likely they want to get things done quickly. And so they don't want you to ruminate and have to go back and forth to the house 4 times. So you want to hope to have made as many observations as you can. Now, one quick tip is you could always take pictures along the way. I know my brain tends to just, I can just see it in my head, but you may want to take pictures to help remind you of certain rooms and certain things you saw. And so what you're going to do is you're going to collect all your thoughts that you've notated. Some people are so technologically friendly that they will go ahead and make all of their notes on their cell phone on, say, an app like Evernote. But you may have written down on a piece of paper the way I do, and so then you would go back to the drawing board, you'd go back to your home office or your office, and that's where you would then break down what you discovered. What needs to be done in this room, what needs to be done, what's the square footage in that room. And so then what you can do is you can call a contractor and start to get some rules of thumb. What's the material cost going to be? Yeah, this is going to need to be mid-grade, this can be high-grade, this can be low-grade. Ask him what the cost of the materials are. Are there any sales or anything he can get a discount on certain materials? What are his costs for labor? What's easy for him to do? What's difficult? What does he have to sub out? What can he do on his own? And so you can really start to explore what exactly it's going to cost to get these certain different items done. And so you're going to add up each one of those items, and that's where you can start to get an idea of what the rehab costs are. And remember, it also has to do with what you can get away with depending on what kind of angle you're taking on the deal. So if at this point, you've basically been in information collection mode, so it's when you get back to the office or maybe when you're driving back that your brain starts to really mull around, okay, what can I really do with this thing? Because maybe what the seller told you on the phone is completely different from what you saw in real life. And so maybe you're still kind of got a little bit of that shock going, trying to figure out, gosh, how could these people have been so wrong about what really needs to be done with a house? But either way, this is where you really start to think about what your notes are really telling you. I mean, can this thing even go as a rental, or is it going to really need way too much work? So that is your next step, and ultimately the hope is that you were very productive in your trip. This is why I make such a big deal of the fact that having one of those out-of-the-box rehab calculator softwares, I think that they pretty much give you a very precise, incorrect number, as opposed to you doing it more the manual way that we've been talking about. Okay, so that is how an expert estimates rehab costs. Sure, they can go through the house and do a couple of quick tips, such as it's going to take $5K, it's going to take $10K, but to really do it right, you have to remove the calculators and really get it dialed in, and that is on a specific item-by-item basis what needs to be done. Well, I'm Phil Pustiovsky with FreedomMentor.com. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you really like this, please make some comments below. You may have some other tips, strategies. You may have some other things to point out, maybe even questions. Make comments just below this video. I try to interact as best I can with my schedule. You can also check out my book, How to Be a Real Estate Investor. That's a #1 bestseller on Amazon. You can head over to our website, FreedomMentor.com, get more resources and trainings. And also, I personally mentor and train a select few people, so if you head over to my website, you may want to apply for my apprentice program. Again, I'm Phil Pustiovsky, FreedomMentor.com. Thanks for watching.